Welcome back to This Is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now to our next guest. Our next guest is going to talk about the return last Thursday of 119 artifacts looted from Nigeria, including human and animal figures, plaques, royal regalia, and a bell. The artifacts, known as the Benin bronzes, are mostly housed in a museum in the city of Leiden, were looted in the late 19th century by British soldiers. In recent years, museums across Europe and North America have moved to address ownership disputes over artifacts looted during the colonial era. They were returned at the request of Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments. During the handover ceremony in Edo State, Oba Iwaredi II, Oba Topaye, the monarch and custodian of Benin culture, described the return of the artifacts as a divine intervention. I'm now being joined from the United States by Professor Peju Layiwola, who teaches at the University of Lagos and is currently the Mellon Curatorial Fellow at the Stanley Museum of Art at the University of Iowa. She served as president of the Art Council of the African Studies Association and has been a Tyson Scholar at the Crystal Bridges Museum of Art in the United States. Professor Layiwola is a granddaughter of the late Oba Akinzua II, the 37th Oba of Benin. Professor Layiwola, welcome to This Day Live. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruben Abati.
Anyway, quickly, let me ask you, what is the significance or perhaps the symbolism of this return of 119 artifacts, Benin bronzes, to Nigeria and to the palace of the Oba of Benin? Implications in terms of cultural identity, cultural pride, and even the heritage of colonialism.
Thank you very much. I like to see the return of these objects from the government of the Netherlands as very important for many reasons. First of all, it's the potential for healing. The 1897 event was a very traumatic experience. There was mass killing of the people of Benin, and in the process of looting this art, and there was the burning of the palace and the exile of a king who held sway in the kingdom of Benin. He was taken away to Calabar, where he died outside of his kingdom. I see this also as a restoration of the destiny of those, the dignity of those who were dispossessed of their treasures, and also for those who are, who are also returning these objects, who displaced them as well. It's also significant for equity and social justice. It's an extension of good faith, an extension of a hand of fellowship and collaboration. And in a sense, it amplifies the strength of the Edo people, Edo culture, that despite British incursion, that kingship still remains intact. Benin civilization still exists, and the arts and culture of the people is very strong and recognized globally. So I like to commend the transparency of the government, the government and the people of the Netherlands. 119 objects returned to Benin, as so far the greatest number returned by any government to Nigeria or to the royal household. And this represents all the Benin objects in the collection of public museums in the Netherlands. I think they are also trying to detach themselves from that violent history. And I think one of the Dutch officials mentioned that stolen items do not have a place in the collection, the national collection. So they're purging themselves of that guilt and historical injustice that occurred during the colonial period. So this sends a clear message to other museums, particularly the British Museum, which is still holding thousands of Benin objects. And only recently, the director of the British Museum mentioned that they are not returning works to Nigeria or to Benin. The Germans had passed on about 1,000, the rights of about over 1,000 objects to Benin, but the German museums are still full of looted Benin art. Only a few have been taken or brought back to Nigeria.
Okay.
So this is the first step.
Okay, Professor Layiwola, I think last year or 2 years ago, a London museum returned 72 artifacts. And you are right. The argument at that time is that, look, these things are part of British culture and history. Some scholars argued in that direction. Some also argued that if you return these things to Africa or to Greece or to India, some of these places where artifacts were looted during the colonial era, that these countries do not have the capacity to preserve these artifacts. Do you think Nigeria has the capacity, the resources to preserve these looted artifacts? Or these artifacts may even be stolen afresh by Nigerians themselves. Do we have the capacity? Do we have the infrastructure?
We keep hearing this question, and I think it's so ridiculous. It shouldn't even function in the discussion about restitution. These works were made by people of Benin, by Edo people. They've been in Benin City. They were kept for several centuries and preserved in the palace as archives, as mnemonics of history and memory. And they were there before the British came to loot them. But what I think is very important is the change of narrative, and also the change of power relations regarding the objects, which is very important. For too long, the 1987 event has cast a shadow over the culture. Benin culture is too beautiful and developed to be concealed by this traumatic experience. And the king talked about the fact that he doesn't want the works to be re-looted. And I think we describe them as treasures, isn't it? And treasures should be preserved, not only for Nigerians, but also for Africans and the entire world. And we know that Benin culture extends beyond Nigeria. So the NCMM has gone into agreement with the royal household, and they recognize the importance of this task before them. The federal government of Nigeria, through its culture ministry, should rise up to this challenge to reinvent our museums, to place more value on the visual arts, on the guild artists, the contemporary artists, curators, and those who can preserve this heritage material so that people can access their culture or the heritage materials which will be exhibited within locally and also internationally as well. So this is a wake-up call for us in Nigeria to make sure that we conserve and preserve these objects in spaces where they can be properly viewed, exhibited. And I think there's also a very important dimension I want to bring out here. We should look at the concept of the objects as they are defined and described in modern museums, with all the protocols that surround the handling of tangible materials and the place and value of these tangible objects within the culture that produced them. And so this is really a new intellectual challenge for the government and the people of Nigeria to think of ways in which these works can be exhibited, preserved, used, and made public to locally and also internationally. Yeah.
Okay, another issue. Okay, we've been discussing restitution. But some other experts on the subject, maybe from Australia and elsewhere, are saying that, in fact, restitution should be accompanied with reparation and apology. Do you think, we should go that far? At least Democratic Republic of Congo asked for apology from the king of, from the Belgian government. I think they got what sounded like an apology. Should Netherlands follow up with apology and also with, some kind of, recompense? Yeah, that would be a word.
Well, I think the return is an acknowledgement of guilt. You don't want to push things too far. For several decades, we've been requesting for the return of objects. His Royal Majesty of Bakenswa II in 1935 requested for 2 stools that were in Germany, and he had to pay for replicas of those objects to be returned to him some years after, because he saw that it was very important for rituals in the palace, And so for it now to have been returned at this time shows that they now recognize that no matter how long looted artifacts are kept in these museums, that they belong to those, the owners of the country. So all over Africa, there's been this epistemic violence. I mean, occurring all over the continent. And only a few years ago, we saw the French government return a few objects to the former kingdom of Dahomey, and saw the way people responded to that. The people of Netherlands, the Dutch have brought the works back to Benin. They recognize that they should be given back to the king, to the people of Nigeria. That in itself is an acknowledgement of guilt. And we, in the last year, in July last year, we returned 2 objects directly to the Oba of Benin from the Stanley Museum of Art, recognizing the place of the king in this discourse. And we took it directly, directly to the king in the palace that was looted by British soldiers in 1897. So there was an apology made by the curator of African Art, Corey Gunlock from the University of Iowa Stanley Museum of Art, to the king, that he actually is apologizing for using these materials to teach without permission from the owners, from the king of Benin. And a hush fell on the palace when he did that. So we are seeing, times are changing, and we're seeing a lot of changes going on, and this is all very welcome.
To this. Now, the British, they have a 1963 law which bans the repatriation of looted artifacts from any museum. They also have a National Heritage Act of 1983, which says, look, anybody that wants these artifacts, you can loan them. You can take them on loan and you return them to the British and all of that. Now, people have stolen something and they are saying the owners should come and loan them and return them. What do you think of that? National Heritage Act, UK, 1983.
Okay, so the arguments over restitution has never really been an eyeball to eyeball process. It had always been the West talking down to us as Nigerians. And I think that the return here is very important because of, it activates the agency of Nigeria and the royal palace in this dialogue. We have always had what you call a monologue, but we have a dialogue now, which is very important. Now, I don't think we should rehash British laws about inalienability. It doesn't concern us. They created the problem in the first instance. They should adjust their laws accordingly. So I get very upset when we talk about that law because they know what to do. They had sold objects to Nigeria before from the Benin collection. They actually sold a few objects when the National Museum was being founded to Nigeria. Why didn't they raise that law of 1963? So this is a different time. People are beginning to realize that we have to move away from all of these obnoxious arguments against the return of looted adults taken violently from the people. You have to think about how you can adjust your laws to make sure that justice is served.
Okay, Professor Layiwola, let me ask you a personal question because you are also connected with this at a personal level. The Olu family is a very prominent family in Benin, and you are also a granddaughter of Oba Akinzua II. So we are talking about your family property, your own heritage at a personal level. And then beyond that, you are a professor of creative arts. So you are also an artist, and we are talking about artworks being stolen. Now, at a personal level, how do you feel?
Well, I feel very happy. I'm very excited about this. And I've been in the palace several times when objects were returned. And I have seen the way and manner in which people responded, the excitement, And I keep saying that when these objects come back, they are tangible objects, but they have a way of activating intangible aspects of the culture. So the song, chants, people are happy, they are excited about what is going on. And as an artist, I have had several exhibitions that have brought this discourse about restitution to the front burner. From 2003, 2005, I've had presentations around the world talking about the injustice that was done in Benin and how these objects have to return. And in 2010, I had a solo exhibition, Benin1897.com, that centered this discourse. And this came from a reaction to an exhibition that held in Vienna and moved to other cities over a 2-year period. And when I got back to Nigeria, there was no discussion about these objects in the West. And so gradually we've been able to create a buzz around the discussion about restitution. In 2019, I also created a buzz around 98 objects that came directly from the loot of 1897 in the Rauto Stratu Youth Museum in Cologne. And luckily, a few of those objects have been returned to Nigeria. So at different levels, I meet it as an academic, as an artist, yes, as a member of the royal family of Benin. I'm very proud of that heritage on my maternal side. And I think that all that is happening is not just about being from the culture, but it is a statement for the rest of Africa. This is a message of hope that works are returning. In my lifetime, this is amazing. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Peju Layiwola, for joining us on This Is Live, this Sunday talk show. Thank you very much indeed for your insights.